Hello everyone, Ember here, and welcome back to a new video. In this one, I wanted to talk about the overall appeal of GLC, because truth be told, there's not really that many videos you can make about GLC. Like, to be honest, apart from like tournament reports and gameplay videos, there's not really many videos that you can make. However, I did want to talk about the overall appeal of GLC, and I think why it's becoming more and more popular, and why, more players will eventually check it out, and hopefully when the player base grows, I guess, if TCG Live eventually adds full expanded, then, GLC might take off in a big way. So I just wanted to put some thoughts out there and create some discussion. So, of course, if you have any thoughts on GLC, what appeals to you, but also what doesn't appeal to you, because, there is no light without the dark. So, of course, if there's any cons to GLC that you really don't like, we will talk about some of them in this video. But, of course, there might be more that are left out. So, of course, do let me know what you think down below. But yeah, let's get into the video. So what is GLC? For those of you who don't know or, never heard of GLC, I guess. It's a single prize only, no rulebox allowed. So EX Pokemon, Radiants, Vs, V-Stars, etc. They all have rule boxes. So you can only play these like cheap single prize attackers, basically. It is singleton, except any basic energy, which is both good and bad because it means you can only play one copy of a card, which makes it cheaper. But it does also mean that setting up like evolution lines such as stage 2s is a bit more awkward. And it does also mean that if you want to play like multiple stage 2s in a GLC deck, it's basically well, it's not unfeasible, but it's unlikely you'll ever, be able to set them all up basically. So yeah, it's a bit more awkward with singleton. Also, special energy is also singleton as well. So basic energy is the only thing that you can run more than one copy of. There's also only one type per deck. So GLC actually stands for Gym Leader Challenge. Probably should have said that at the start of the video. But yeah, Gym Leader Challenge. So effectively you're focusing on a single type to be the gym leader of, effectively. That's like the narrative of the format, I guess. And it does mean that you get to play, your favorite Pokemon from that single type. We'll talk more about like the pros and cons soon. But, a single type does kind of like push you down a more narrow path. Do you favor dark types who are typically quite sneaky and evolve a lot of poison, or do you prefer fighting types, which are generally quite tanky and do a lot of damage? So, different avenues to pick. But yeah, why play GLC? Well, it's pretty cheap compared to standard. Like I've never understood why standard players say, oh, yeah, standard's pretty cheap. And you look at it, it's like 45 quid or 60 plus dollars for a standard deck. And they're like, oh, it's so cheap. Maybe compared to other TCGs, like MTG has some crazy deck prices. I know like Commander and MTG gets really crazy and very scary. And even like regular standard in MTG is like crazy. And Yu-Gi-Oh! Is quite infamous for prices. One Piece, although a bit more niche, is certainly very scary. Yeah, there's a lot of expensive TCGs, but even just compared to regular standard, GLC is just a lot cheaper. And, that's obviously a massive appeal, especially, when things are getting more and more expensive around the world. So that's nice. It's also mostly more balanced with more RNG. And I say mostly because balance is very weird in GLC. You've got cards that are very, very good, but because you're only allowed one copy of each card, it kind of balances it out a bit. You're only going to be able to use that thing maybe once or twice a game. I know there's like rescue carrier, rescue stretcher, ways of recovering Pokemon and such. But typically, it is quite difficult to sometimes set up the same Pokemon more than once. So even if Pokemon are better than others, GLC is at least a bit more balanced with RNG in that sense. Most types also get new stuff every set, which is very cool. So nice new buffs across the board. And you also get to focus on one type in particular. So if, we said earlier, like dark types and fighting types. So maybe you like healing your Pokemon. So grass types might appeal to you. So you might think, oh, new grass types. I'll look at the new set and see if there's any new grass cards. Oh, there's one or two new cool cards. That's great, And even the next set, Twilight Masquerade, is going to be, I think it's Bug Catcher set, which allows you to look at the top 7 cards of your deck, take 2 in any combination of grass Pokemon and grass energy. Fantastic. Fantastic card for GLC. Also, you get to play your favorite cards. So this is like the biggest appeal for me personally, is it's an excuse to play like Pokemon that aren't great by any stretch of imagination, like this Tyrantrum would never fly in its standard or expanded. However, it would fly in GLC. It's all right. I mean, it's not great in GLC, of course, but, it is an excuse to play my favorite cards. Bulk has a use, though it still has limitations, so you can't just play anything. I know there's this long-standing thing about how in GLC you get to play bulk. That is true to a point, but it does obviously have limitations. There will still be cards that are just too horrendously bad, even by GLC standards. So there's still like a lot of cards you can pick up very cheap for GLC, which is cool. It's also the most casual format right now because Pokemon don't seem to want to support another casual format. I don't know why that is. I guess maybe they know that the money lies in Roblox Pokemon cards and such, but yeah, it definitely is a bit frustrating, but it is the most casual format to play right now. So what are the cons of GLC? So not all types can feel equal, especially when it comes to draw power. So like if you're not water or colorless, your draw power is pretty limited. I know fire types have some nice draw options, but typically across the board, especially fighting types, draw power is very limited, and you'll be, hard to draw cards off stuff like abilities and things. You can, of course, still use supporters that are good and items, but, you're way more restricted on the Pokemon frontier. And then we get to what is my biggest gripe with GLC is that with the singleton aspect, players are encouraged to play the best cards around rather than ones they enjoy, either intentionally or unintentionally, with the difference in power levels between cards. And so staples end up being a bit more pricey. And this is a bit of a weird topic to kind of debate because I know that this won't matter to some players, and to some players this is going to be a big deal, of course. Like, why would you play one version of Weavile when there's a much better version of Weavile? That kind of argument. And I think at that point, it only really matters if you're taking it seriously and you want to play an event, right? Like if you want to compete in an event and win the event, then, then that's when you have to like start caring about the best cards for each type. Typically, you could probably just get away with playing whatever you want, especially in a more casual setting. Like how I would personally pitch GLC to like someone running Elite Challenge at a store, like how I would try and get them to run a GLC event is say, encourage players to bring a singleton monotype deck, of course, obeying by the rules, but encourage them to play their favorite cards. Don't encourage them to go out and buy like all these individual one-offs for dark types, for example, like your Weaviles, your Guzzlords, your Spiritooms. Just play whatever you want to play, and you'll have a lot more fun doing that than, worrying about not having this one-off card, which, yeah, will help your deck immensely, but it's still going to be a pain, and it doesn't feel great when everyone's playing the exact same 60, It's that kind of thing. Also, there is a ban list in GLC. You might love Amazing Rare Koga, for example. I know this is a bit more niche, and there's only a handful of cards actually banned in GLC. I can't name all of them off the top of my head, but there is a ban list over on the official Tricky Gym website for GLC. But yeah, Amazing Rare Koga is an example of a card that was unfortunately banned, along with the Stadium that gets 2 unidentified fossils out the deck because it makes colorless decks apparently quite strong. So yeah, there is some ban list. So, if you have a favorite card like Amazing Rare Koga, that can be quite annoying. Also, some Pokemon don't really exist. I say don't really, but it's basically don't exist because they're so awkward to get into play. Some Pokemon just don't exist, e.g. Tyranitar and the Eevee line. So say you want to play Vaporeon. Well, you can't play Vaporeon in your deck because Eevee's colorless. And this is like such a weird thing to me because in a water deck, you won't be ever using Eevee to attack. And if you do use Eevee to attack, Eevee's a colorless type, so you're not actually getting a type advantage on anything else. I know it's a little bit different for Tyranitar because Pupitar and Larvitar are fighting types, and you could argue, oh, that gives dark decks that play Tyranitar a bit of an advantage or something. But they're evolving Pokemon that aren't really doing a lot of damage, and it doesn't really make that much sense to me that these lines should be removed from GLC just for the sake of, oh, it has to be monotype. Like, it stands to reason, like, if I was a gym leader and I wanted a Tyranitar on my 6 Pokemon team, would my opponent really care if I also had a Pupitar and a Larvitar, even though it's a Dark-type gym? I mean, not really, because it's about Tyranitar. Tyranitar is the Dark-type, he's the main attacker, so it just feels a bit weird that these Pokemon have to be kind of excluded from the format just because they have weird evolving kind of evolves. I know like Altaria is also similar, although there has been colorless Altaria as well as colorless Swablu, so it's fine. But, it's just a lot of Pokemon like that that are kind of removed from the format as a result, which I think is a bit weird. And, they should make exceptions basically because it just feels bad, feels bad. Also, it's not supported on TCG Live as of making this video, which sucks. It's not supported at all because there's no full expanded. The matchmaking's a bit weird. It's a number of things basically. Also, GLC games typically take a bit longer than regular standard games, and standard games are already long enough on TCG Live. Like, I cannot fathom playing a really long game on TCG Live playing GLC. It would be fun because it is GLC, of course, but just a massive time consumer basically. So it'd be nice to have TCG Live actually supported in the game. But yeah, not of right now. But GLC is just most fun when it's not competitive. This is just a very brief point I wanted to touch upon. I've only got one card on the slide, I know. But I just wanted to briefly touch upon this aspect because GLC, I know I've talked about this so much in the video already, but it's just a lot more fun when it's not taken so seriously. And I think GLC was originally made for that as well. It was made to be not this consistent, everyone plays the exact same best cards of each type. Everyone just kind of plays what they want to play, and it's a lot more fun that way. I know you'll always weed out some of the worst attackers because that's how a format happens. That's how meta works and stuff. But it's just a lot more fun when it's taken at a more casual level. And, players are not trying to find the best decks, basically. They're trying to have fun with it. But yeah, this is my water GLC deck right now. I don't know if anyone cares about this, but I just wanted to use it as an example because basically how I settled on my GLC decks, I've got two examples in this video, is I went for Empoleon. Why Empoleon? Because I liked Empoleon as a budget deck at the time. I thought it was a lot of fun in Sun and Moon. So that's why I went for Empoleon. For another stage 2, I went for Kingdra, just because I've always liked this card. I think Brine was a very fun attack, and Tornado Shot's quite cool as well. And, I just felt like Kingdra would be a fun card to use. I then also went for Golduck, because I actually have a lot of nostalgia for Golduck. Because Golduck was actually my first Sun and Moon budget deck, I guess. So it was like a major piece of nostalgia for me. So I was like, I'll play Golduck in my GLC deck. So yeah, that's why I run Golduck. And I also run the Seeking, which isn't a very good Seeking. And I know the one from 151 is a lot better. But the thing is that Seeking has an attack that costs 3 energy. And I don't play like Baxcalibur or Blastoise in my deck. I play attackers that cost 1 or 2 energy max. I think I play Wugtrio as a meme because I play like triple acceleration energy as well. But I typically don't play like high amounts of special energy, and I don't play like ways of ramping special energy or basic energy for that matter. So this Seeking that only attacks 1 energy just made more sense. And the attack enhanced Horn is really cool. It just means that I have an excuse to put loads of weird janky tools in my deck and basically have a blast putting stuff like Bursting Balloon on this Seeking and watching it blow up. So yeah, fun times overall for GLC. My Psychic GLC deck is, I would say, a little bit better. These are just some of the attackers, by the way. I don't just play 4 evolution lines in these decks. I do play other Pokemon, of course, but just as my main examples, I went for this Dusknoir. I did want to use the Dusknoir from, I think it was Celestial Storm, the one with Grim Markings, which is quite cool. But I don't have one of them yet, so I'm just playing this Dusknoir. It does have a cool ability, Dark Invitation, which is quite powerful. And then Mind Jack is okay, and I can pay for the attack cost using Twinergy or Double Colors. So yeah, quite fun. So why am I playing Cofagrigus? Well, Cofagrigus is a good card in GLC, yes, but Cofagrigus also happens to be one of my favorite Pokemon, like ever. So Cofagrigus just made sense to me personally. Then we have Garbodor here, which again is quite a competitive card, but I played a lot of the Sun and Moon era, so Garbodor was just like massive nostalgia for me personally, going back to things like Podgarb. So Garbodor, again, made a lot of sense. Why is Swalot in the deck? Because he's cute. there's no other reason. He's just cute. He's just a derpy little clay Pokemon that I was like, oh, that's cute. I'll put it in the deck. Has a fun attack, Amnesia, very annoying to deal with against stuff like Torterra. I thought it'd be fun. So that's why Swalot's in the deck. It's just an example of, playing fun cards. But yeah, this is just another example. I know I've covered some of this in a previous GLC video I did called Fun Deck Ideas for GLC. I recommend checking that out if you're stuck for ideas. But yeah, this is just an example of picking a theme like Dark Poison and going with it, and plenty of choice to build deck around with, basically. Also, just some other cool Pokemon to try out, like this Machamp with Guts, the Weavile that often gets overlooked with a very powerful attack Rule of Evil, this Cradley, which I recently purchased from a friend for 10p, yeah, very cool Cradley, and Iron Jugulis with Homing Headbutt, so very cool cards overall, and just some examples of the fun that you can have in GLC, basically. But yeah, thanks for watching. I do a new set review for GLC, by the way, for each new release, so subscribe if you're interested in being updated within GLC. I try and make other GLC videos like this one, but it is difficult to come up with content without involving IRL. So what I'll have to do is maybe do some GLC deck profiles, like ones that I've made personally, but I don't know if there's any interest at all in people saying that. But if you want to dive into the competitive side, of course, OmniPoke and the format creator Tricky Jim have both done fantastic videos and guides for each type, as well as like more updated, in-depth guides to the format itself. So, if you're interested in that, then be sure to go check them out. But yeah, thank you for watching.